Hey, everybody. Hope you are doing well. Welcome to another episode of the Tyler Feller Show. We are continuing our coverage today in the Bryan Kohberger case. In just a couple of minutes, we will be joined by Jennifer Coffindaffer, who hopefully will be able to just do a breakdown of all of the facts in this case. There were some new motions that were granted in the case recently, and they're important. They are important, but I think they're predictable. I definitely want to get into talking about some of the facts in this case while Jennifer Coffindaffer is on the stream, so we can have an opportunity today to make sure that we're covering everything that needs to be covered, and also push against some of the resistance that seems to be out there in sort of the ecosystem of this case. Why I asked the question in the poll: do you think Bryan Kohberger is guilty? We're still sitting around that 90% mark of people who think Bryan Kohberger is guilty, but it seems like the 5 or the 10% of people who think Bryan Kohberger is innocent are the loudest. And I'm all about making sure there's justice in cases, and we want to make sure that whatever is being resolved in a way that makes sense all the way around. And so I'm not against people asking questions, but in this case, the folks who seem to come and kind of be pro Bryan Kohberger have an unusual bent towards them, and I don't understand it. And so I want to just walk through the facts of this case and see what Jennifer Coffindaffer has to say about that. By the way, I'd love to know where you guys are watching from. I'm coming to you live from Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful, amazing city. And yeah, every single time we get together, we have people from all over the place that tune in, and I think it's so amazing. I also want to let you guys know we're totally crowdfunded, which means we can't do what we do unless amazing people like you come alongside and support. I want to thank Barbara, who sent a gift already over on Zelle today. Thank you, Barbara. And you can also support through PayPal, which is Tyler Feller Cash App, $ Tyler Feller 22, or Venmo, which is at Tyler-Feller. You can also support through Super Sticker or Super Chat. Again, retired FBI Special Agent SWAT team member Jennifer Coffindaffer is joining us today in just a couple of minutes to break down the facts in the Bryan Kohberger case and talk a little about some of these new motions that came out. Terry coming from Washington, Karen in England, Teresa in Tampa, Utah, Pokey Dots, Eastern Texas, Maryland, Jacksonville. We got people from all over England, Texas, Pennsylvania. When I do a stream earlier, it does appear that we have people that are in the United Kingdom or England that are oftentimes watching. Please turn up your volume. It's not my volume. You're going to have to turn up your volume, Lisa. Jennifer, how are you? You're sideways.
I know. I can't get I've been having problems with StreamYard. I can't hear very well, and I'm upside down. Okay, let me see what I can figure out. You have any StreamYard tricks?
You know, if you can't hear me very well, I'm wondering if you're watching through Google Chrome.
I am.
Okay, that's usually the fix for that one. So I don't know what the...
So should I... How do I get you off Google Chrome?
Well, you want me on Google Chrome. Oh, she disappeared. Amy Heights says, I'm having issues too. What are your issues, Amy Heights? Oh, you keep getting booted out again. If you're using the app, Amy, my suggestion for you would be to do the latest version of the app. Okay, you're back and you're the right angle.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me? Good?
You're a little chopped up, but it's nothing that I can't overcome. I'm going to try to get you on my special handy dandy stand. Uh-oh. Sorry. Technical difficulties.
Okay, I think New Station needs to create for you a home studio. That would be pretty cool.
You know what? They sent me all the stuff. I've got lights, I've got mics, I've got all this cool stuff. I'm not using them.
Like, I have it, but I
have them. Okay. I got this fancy thing, but all right. Hopefully nobody can see. Maybe people are watching. Sorry. having a few issues here. I'm going to try another stand. Bear with me. You can see my whole house here.
Yeah, everybody, we're getting a tour of Jennifer's beautiful house.
Yep. Okay, I'm moving. All right. Oh my gosh, Tyler, you're not supposed to have me on yet, but that's okay.
I'm so sorry. I thought you were ready to go.
Well, I should be ready. The whole, what do you call this? StreamYard.
Yeah.
StreamYard isn't being nice right now.
Well, that's unfortunate. But you're settled in now, it feels like.
We're settled in. I don't have a good backdrop, but that's okay.
Well,
how's it going, Tyler?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining. And I feel like this is long overdue, this conversation with you today, because it's been a while since you've been on. And there really hasn't been a whole lot of developments in this case, but there certainly has been a lot of opposition. And one of the things that I've said is that 5% of people, or whoever, maybe 10 now, that think Bryan Kohberger is innocent are the loudest 5 or 10% of people that I've ever heard.
It's a phenomena like I've never seen in true crime. I say that, Tyler, because it's with the amount of evidence we have.
Yeah.
I understand people, he has to be given his just due in terms of being innocent in the eyes of the law. There's none of us that don't say that.
Yeah.
He's innocent in the eyes of the law. And guess what? So was Charles Manson.
Yeah.
So was Ted Bundy. Yeah. So is everyone. That's what we all have, that presumption. And I'm not trying to compare him to that. I'm just saying that everybody has that presumption.
Yeah.
Am I going in and out, or you're good?
A little bit. Yeah, you're going in and out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy, but you said it's because I'm in Chrome. Anyway, my point is, I guess, that while I've seen, people concerned about that aspect of it, I understand that aspect, and I understand people looking at the facts that are before us and really trying to dissect them, and that makes total sense to me. What's happened, though, is it's just completely fallen off the wagon. Yes. We're talking about insane conspiracies. We're talking about blaming others, that there's not one iota of fact to support or from the investigation. And that is troubling to me, because I feel like when that happens, Tyler, it's just really all about money. And what does that mean for Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, and Ethan's families? It's just wrong. If I were one of those parents and got on, even my Twitter, which, by the way, they're all on there. Yeah. Just to let your audience know. And I know because I get feedback. Mm-hmm. It is heartbreaking for them.
Oh, that's the toughest part for me. It's like, and people ask me what my motive. Well, my motive is always about the gospel, and you know that. Like, the reason I do YouTube is so we can share the gospel with people. But aside that, individually speaking about this case, my motive would be justice for the victims and peace for the families. And unfortunately, that's the opposite of what's taking place. And it's been so heartbreaking and frustrating for me. And I always think of things in terms of from like a spiritual perspective. And the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities. And the people I've seen them going after are people like me and you who are standing up for truth. And they're combating it with just bold-faced lies. And to me, it feels like we're actually in a spiritual battle against truth right now. And that's not just in this case, that's culturally, that's across our country and across the world. And so I think you're playing a really pivotal and important role, culturally and spiritually speaking, more so than you even know, because you're fighting for truth. You're actually standing up and fighting for truth. And I so appreciate that you're so strong, because we need someone like you that's strong. And now you have a lot of influence, and you're able to stick to what's going on in this case. And you almost dismantle some of the fiction that comes in one by one. You sort of let it simmer. And then when it gets to the point, you're like, boop, 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 and you bullet point it out. And I love that. And I so appreciate that about you.
Well, I really am focused, especially this week and probably into next week, really trying to focus on the facts and trying to show that probable cause affidavit in a visual, because so many people are visual. They want to understand what all that 10 pages, I think they deal, maybe not quite that much of the actual pings combined with the video surveillance. What does that look like in route? And I hope people will take just a moment and look at those 5 maps that I put up, because they're in little time sequences to make them easy. I know it's a lot. Like sometimes I look at them, I'm like, oh, that was a lot. Maybe I should take off this box or that box. But it really gives people a visual for the route that was taken. And that's not really going to change. That it's going to be more honed in on, but those are facts that I think are going to stick. And the DNA, I believe, is going to stick, because no matter how you slice it, the defense has got to get over the fact his DNA is on there. Because that can't be, so now you got to figure out a way to explain how a sheath got under one of the victims. And there's no good explanation.
There's no good explanation. Like, I like what you said the other day. Like, okay, so those of you who think that mysteriously this sheath appeared under these bodies that had DNA of Bryan Kohberger attached to it, how did it get there? Somebody stole Bryan Kohberger's knife? Did somebody, take his DNA and put it on the knife intentionally? But I made a bullet point graph the other day of just the facts against Bryan Kohberger. He was around 1122 King Road 12 times. He left his apartment at 244 the night of November 13th. There are multiple sightings of suspect vehicle 1, which is Bryan Kohberger's car, that white Elantra, around 1122 King Road from 3:30 to 4:25 a.m. The car parked at 404. It left at 420. His DNA was on the knife sheath. He went back to the crime scene around 9:12 a.m. after having left his apartment at 9 a.m. He turned his phone off at the exact time that the crime was committed. He was caught separating his trash, out of his family's trash when the SWAT team came in and arrested him. He was putting his trash in the neighbor's bin. An eyewitness described his build, his height, unique characteristics about him. There was a receipt in his apartment that had supplies consistent with the eyewitness account. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on. But as I made a list of some of those bullet points of the facts, I'm like, this dude's either the unluckiest guy in all of America to have done all of these things and get pinned for this crime, or it points to exactly what that grand jury decided, which was it needed to be an indictment that led to a trial.
Right. I always say there is no way anyone, I don't think, can argue that there's probable cause plus in this. You can argue, if you want, that it hasn't been proven beyond a reasonable doubt because we haven't gone through trial. But to accept any other premise would be to say the judge was wrong, who read the affidavit initially and made the decree that there was probable cause, or to discredit a grand jury and say that they would indict a ham sandwich. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to hear all that, Tyler. I would ask your audience members and anyone very few people, unfortunately, ever get to serve on a grand jury, especially a grand jury involving murder. And very few people testify at grand juries. I've testified at grand juries probably, I don't know, between 100 and 200 times. That's what I did for a living. Make cases, bring them to the grand jury, and show the evidence that was there. These grand jurors, and I know we've talked about it before, but they're not dummies. They're people like who are in your audience. They're carpenters, they're house moms, they're lawyers, they're people who have been called, they're citizens in that community to evaluate the evidence. I have been grilled.
Pastors.
Pastor. I've been grilled on the grand jury stand. But Jennifer, what about this? Well, Jennifer, explain pings. Jennifer, tell me about this eyewitness. How credible are they? And this is not just a lay down. Yes, the prosecutor or the defense isn't in there asking those questions, but guess what? 14 grand jurors plus are, and they care. They know that the decision about somebody's life is in their hand. So that really irritates me, that they discredit what the grand jury did and the hours and hours and hours that they poured through this case, through those horrible crime scene photos, which they very likely could have seen, and the emotional toll it took on them to just have people say, oh, well, they would have indicted anyone. It's ridiculous.
I hate when people say they can indict a ham sandwich. I hate when people go after the bureaucracy or the figureheads of federal agencies and try to make it out like, for example, all 40, how many ever, 46 FBI agents that were working in Moscow were corrupt. That
60.
really bothers. 60.
60.
Doesn't that really bother you too when like that's essentially what they're alluding to?
You know, Tyler, there was a point maybe about 3 weeks ago when this reached a fever pitch. I think it was kind of after the Dateline series, believe it or not, because Dateline had some source information, and people can either believe that source information or not believe it. And I respect either position. But Dateline is likely one of the most credible, longest airing true crime shows in the history of network television.
Yeah.
And for them, and it got, you know, I've obviously got to know the producers and the people involved in that production. These people are so reputable. They are not going to put their reputations on the line for some erroneous nugget of information. I mean, they could have said he bought it on eBay. They could have said his mom bought it. They could have, just imagine all the different scenarios. They said he bought it on Amazon and had the date.
Yeah.
For me, I'm believing it. I just don't think Dateline would lie. I really don't. People fight. I don't.
Well, even the thing they said about his sister had some suspicions makes sense. She's a therapist. Like, right? It makes sense to me. If she is worth her weight as a therapist, she should have some suspicions. He stole her cell phone many years ago. There's a history there. And the thing about him stealing her cell phone, which I find to be most interesting about that, is it's not that he stole her cell phone. That happens. It's that it had to have gotten to a breaking point where the family turned him in for it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it had got past the point of them being able to deal with it internally.
No, I agree with you. It showed me the biggest thing that showed me was the family dynamic.
Yep.
And having an individual in their family that was victimizing other people in the family. The fact that a father, which is almost to me unfathomable, would turn in a son, would cause him to be arrested, would cause a record. That's pretty significant. And so it was meaningful. I don't think it'll be used in court. But we don't know what all that report said.
Yeah.
We just know the bare bones. And it was important for law enforcement to look at that. They don't want any surprises anywhere around the corners. They're going to leave no stone unturned in this case.
Oh, I agree totally. Well, there's a couple questions that I had come up that I wanted to talk to you about. One of them is around the FBI cast capabilities. Can you break that down for us and sort of help us figure out what we can expect from that?
Well, you know what I like to draw everyone's attention to, because it is complicated. I was never a cast agent. I did not work in that department. That is such a specialized unit. The individuals who work in that usually start there early on in their career, and they stay there throughout their career. And that's how they get so good at it. But what I can tell you is from a case agent perspective. So in other words, from Payne's perspective, Payne, who wrote the affidavit. So whenever you're writing an affidavit, you're looking at the cellular information that you get back from your search warrant or subpoena from the providers. And that's what Payne did. That's how he denotes what the pings were, you know, where they were, the time frame, and so forth. From there, he's going to turn all that information over all of it on all of their phones, everything over to CAS, to the FBI. They have spent now months, and some people might say months. Jen, gosh, how can it take so long? These reports are so long and labor intensive because they're looking back at all of these records. And not only that, they're cross-referencing historical data in that area to come up with particular triangulations of where these cell towers were hit based on not only what happened that day on November 13th, but also based on prior pings, if you will.
Yeah.
It's complicated, Tyler. But what I try to direct everybody to is the Murdaugh trial.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's the same FBI supervisory special agent that testifies at this. He is amazing. Yeah. And juries love it because this isn't about your opinion, my opinion, another agent's opinion. This isn't about anything but irrefutable, for the most part, science, just like the DNA is going to be.
Well, I think that's very intriguing. Another thing that you had mentioned yesterday was an interview that I haven't seen the extent of either until you had posted it, which I thought was really intriguing. And in that interview, a couple of things pop up. One of them is Steve Gonzalez mentions Bryan Kohberger potentially connecting to Wi-Fi network or touching Wi-Fi, which is really intriguing, but he also kind of addresses the delay of the phone call. And that's something that people have said. Jennifer Coffindaffer refuses to talk about the delay in the phone call. And to me, I have addressed it many times. I just think it's normal. A college kid is out late and they sleep for 8 hours. Probably they're intoxicated. It doesn't feel abnormal to me. And so I wanted to ask you about what you thought.
Oh boy, I tell you, I've talked about that early on. If you look back at Newsweek, right after the arrests in January, I talk about it in length. But I'll talk about it again for those who feel like I'm doing some sort of sidestep, because I'm not. Dylan Mortensen has a very specific accounting of what she heard. Right? We know she heard what she thought was somebody playing with the dog. We know what she thought she heard, that Kaylee Gonzalez said there's somebody's in the house. We know then later we hear these screams, or screams wasn't the word. What was the word she used? That it was Xana, right? And then somebody else saying, I'm going to help you, right? So she hears a lot that's really intriguing. She comes out, looks 3 different times. On the 3rd time, she sees what is believed to be Bryan Kohberger, but certainly what we know was the assailant, all clad in black, with the baklava, we call it, clear through up into his eyes, a cap, fully donned in covering. And she sees that, and it specifically says she is frozen in fear.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if people know this, but I'm going to give an educated, estimation that she was probably interviewed multiple times, that her interviews are long. This is going to be an amazing, what we call an FD 302. Which is a report of this interview. And I don't know if they recorded it. But nevertheless, she's going to have to be on the stand to explain what she saw and everything she went through. But this is just a snippet, Tyler, that they decided that they would use.
It's 2 sentences.
It's a snippet from likely hours of interviewing.
Yeah.
Hours of interviewing. So, but what we do know that they chose, in other words, out of everything she said, that she was frozen in fear.
Yeah.
So many have never been frozen in fear.
That's right. It's true.
They have never had what they thought was their life on the line, that they thought they could die that day.
Yeah.
And I believe, we know Dylan was out till all hours of the night. We believe she was intoxicated, that she had partaken in drinking. She sees that frozen. By the way, only 21 years old. I have a 21-year-old, and I could tell you they are emotional.
Yeah.
And here she's thinking, we don't know whether she saw the knife or not. We know that that's not in the affidavit. If she didn't see the knife, it makes all the sense in the world to me, because it seems as if from the description, she really focused in on the eyes and the bushy eyebrows. And that was what caught her attention, tunnel vision. This was probably a second, maybe 2 seconds, that she peered out, saw that, panicked, froze, probably was thinking, oh my God, I could die. And you might say, well, or people might say, how dare you speculate? How dare you pretend to know what Dylan Mortensen thought? Well, I can speak from being a victim and from feeling that exact same feeling. And you want to freeze. Some people freeze, some people flee, some people fight. I'm a fleer. I automatically go into, innately, I've been trained not to do that. But when I was her age, that's what I would have done.
Yeah.
She froze.
Right.
And I think she went back into that room, shut that door, locked it, and emotionally overcome with alcohol, I believe, involved, the time of night, everything she saw, just passed out. When she woke up the next morning, as you well put, these kids sleep so late.
Yeah.
Because they go to bed at 4 a.m. So if you're getting 8 hours of sleep, you wake up at noon. And I think she woke up, and we don't even know what she saw. We don't even know if she went upstairs or she saw Xana or we don't know what she saw. But it infuriates me that a victim like this, who's going to have to live with survivor's guilt, who's going to have to live with that reenactment in her mind, who's probably every week at least experiences fear and pain when she goes to sleep, that people are pointing the finger at her.
Oh, I hate it so much. Villainizing victims is the way I've phrased it, because that's what it feels like they're doing 100%. So she's frozen in fear. She's shock phase. It's not surprising to me that she didn't wasn't able to make a 911 call.
Right. So. And there's so many other, there's just so many things we don't know about that particular, what she really did. I think we can only hypothesize. We're going to know, but this is what we do know. And this is why I think it's so irritating. We do know she's not a suspect. She hasn't been arrested. There's no information, zero goose egg, that she was involved in this. The only thing we do know is she didn't make the call timely and all those other details we just discussed. So for people to imagine, to extrapolate, to just make up that there are facts, the police would have arrested her already. If she was complicit in this, she's not. And people from that need to move on.
That goes to like your question, both the jacks or whatever. We did have a question from Tim Allen, who sent in a picture, and he said one thing that he was noticing about this picture is you can see a 5 and a 6 with those markers behind Bryan Kohberger as far as height goes, and behind him.
So yeah.
You can obviously tell he's much taller than 6 foot. And I think the heart of his question is it going to be problematic based on Dylan's testimony of his height, knowing that he's 6'3" or 6'4", if that creates a problem?
Well, now, so I'm still trying to find definitively how tall he is. And I think I'm going to be able to do that. I think I am. I'm going down a investigative line where I think I'm going to be able to figure that out. But right now, and we've discussed this a little.
Maybe because of we don't know if he's right against the wall.
We don't know what those marks are.
Well, they say 5 and 6. This is from a mugshot in Pennsylvania.
Oh, right over here. I see what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah, when I bring it up. Yeah. Okay. So could be. But we're going to find out. What we do know right now, Tyler, is that we do have a driver's license. That was what was put in the affidavit. And I understand people say, well, he could have been 6 foot tall when he was 16. But you have to go and reinstate every 4 years in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So he would have gone back a couple of times before this arrest. Would he have ever changed that? I just got mine done about 2 months ago, because in Florida, I think it's every 7 years I have to go, or 9 years now. And they asked me, how tall am I? Well, I gave them my height because I haven't changed since about 3rd grade. But he likely has changed. Was he honest in what he said? We don't know, but we know the official record says 6 foot.
Yeah.
We know that every place else, and I'm sure you've looked, every place, every report, everything says 5'8". I have a real problem seeing 5'8".
He's not 5'8".
I totally agree with that. Is he 6'3", 6'4", as I've heard many people try to say? As I wrote in my tweet, not according to official documents, but I'm gonna hopefully be able to post that.
He looks tall to me.
He does.
Standing next to other police officers, he's tall.
But you know what? Look at what the average man is. The average man, I think, is 5'9". I've even seen 5'8" in the United States. It's way lower than that abroad, but I believe it's 5'9" now. I think it used to be 5'8". I mean, 6 foot is tall. That's 4 inches more.
Yeah.
And so when people compare him to the people he was around, it's clear he's taller than the average, but I can look at different angles of those same photos and it doesn't look like he's that tall. I mean, meaning 6'4".
Yeah. I mean, there he is next to these other officers and he's taller than all of them. So.
Yeah. I don't know, but I do know this, and this is really what the point is of all of this. If he's 6'4", does that discredit Dylan Mortenson's view of how tall he is?
Yeah.
Right? That's the question at hand. I would say I don't believe so, and let me say why. All the time, even trained law enforcement officers, when we're on surveillance, I have to put in my surveillance log, I see a white male, he's got a beard, he's approximately 5'10", he's wearing such and such. I am giving my best estimation based on seeing thousands of people on surveillance over the years and being able to approximate height in the flesh, right? Most people don't do that. I've had so much fun with just my friends, going out to dinner and or lunch, we're hanging around and it'll come up in conversation. Just how did you do surveillance? How did you know how tall people were? And people would come into the restaurant. I'd say, that guy's 5'10", that guy's 5'8", that guy's 5'7", that guy's 6'2", because you see it so much. And then they would give their guesstimation, right? And then we run over and ask the guy. It's just kind of fun. But in this situation, are we expected for Dylan Mortenson, a 21-year-old at 4 a.m, intoxicated, likely tired, frozen in fear, to have an exactly know how somebody tall? I mean, she says he's tall, 5'10", I think he says, or taller. I don't think that will be a difficult obstacle in answer to your viewer.
Athena's actually said that. She's our resident attorney. She said, Dylan, it was likely impaired by drugs and alcohol, in my humble opinion. And I think that that's probably pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we agreed on 30 minutes. I have one final question for you. It's this. I want to make it 2 questions. Recently,
go ahead. We can go a little over.
Okay. Here's the other 2 questions I have. People have said because they found other DNA around in the house that he likely had an accomplice, or they could have had the wrong person. I've kind of chalked that up to be just normal DNA from friends that were in the house, I think they probably would have figured out who those people were. That's my thought. So I'd love your insight on it. The second
Okay.
thought is sort of in that same time span, they came out and said there's no DNA in the cars at all. And so they were coupling the idea that, hey, there's no DNA in his car or apartment. So that must mean he didn't do this. Plus, there's two other people's DNA. And I just think he had 6 weeks to clean his car and clean his apartment.
Yeah, so let me tackle the first one first. I believe that DNA is going to be on the glove, is probably of an officer that came to extract the glove. And normally when an officer goes up, they might not have been gloved and they might have touched that glove. So I think one of the profiles is going to possibly be of an officer. It happens all the time. Unfortunately, not everybody always is gloved, and sometimes they'll touch something and that DNA is extracted. So I would look for one of those to end up being an officer. The second one, or the second and third, I think are both going to be from people who have been in that apartment, party goers.
Yeah.
We know there was a huge party there the night before. Now, people might say, well, how come they don't have it yet? Oh my gosh, Tyler, all the people that were in that house, I would just ask your audience, look back at all the footage, the body cam footage of the different parties
Yeah.
that have come up. Look
And
at
the
all
people
those.
who live there are not even ever at the parties.
Yeah, they weren't even there. If you look at all of that, it gives you some idea of just the breadth of the numbers of people that have been in and out of there. So now say that this is, I'm a lead agent on this, not the case agent. And the lead I have been given is for to identify every person that's ever been at that house, period. So not only the people who are at that house for this school year, but past school years, if it wasn't appropriately cleaned. You know, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me that they're just down to a few profiles they don't have identified. So how do they do that? So now I'm the agent. I've got all these people to identify, right? So I do that through interviews with witnesses. Okay, who were you with? Who were they with? Was there anybody else you saw there? And then you just keep going. Then you interview that person and that person and that person until finally you think you've identified everybody at that party, everybody at the other parties we saw on tape, and everybody who hopefully has ever been at one of these parties. Hopefully everybody can understand that this would take weeks, if not months, to do. Right. Then when you talk to them, you have to convince them to give you a DNA sample.
Yeah.
So I go knock on your door, and well, if you're a minor, that's a whole nother thing. Then I've got to get approval from your parent. So now I'm tracking all these down. Then I'm asking for a voluntary submission. I guarantee some people said, I'm not giving you my DNA because they're worried about something else they did.
Yeah.
Some other petty theft or this or that. So now I got to get a warrant, which they'll be able to get a warrant to get your DNA. Hopefully everybody could see just the time that this one, and I'm just one little lead agent working on one little focus of the case.
Yep.
Then you got to send it to the lab. All these hundreds of profiles. Now your lab technicians, who, by the way, have dozens, if not hundreds of other cases assigned to them that they're working on, other murders, other rapes, other crimes, especially the FBI lab, the Indiana State Police, or the Idaho State Lab, right? But they're pushing all that aside because this is very important. And now it takes time for them to compare to the DNA profiles that were extracted from that house.
Yeah.
So I'm in awe of law enforcement, quite frankly, as somebody who's been on the other side, saying, great job.
Yeah.
That you were narrowed it down to just this many. And now we need to make sure every officer, I already told you 60 FBI agents were assigned, all the Idaho state police, or many Idaho state police were in there, all the locals that were in there. You've got to get all that compared. So I'm not surprised. I think they're going to figure it out. It's just taking more time.
Yeah. Well, I think they could have already figured it out, and we don't know because there's a
Right.
gag order in place.
100%, Tyler. And I think it's going to be, as I said, people that were in that house partying or otherwise there, and maybe a law enforcement officer.
The defense's strategy is pretty weak, but it feels like they're just shotgunning and hoping that because of the repetition, it wears people's minds down. At least that's what I think they're doing.
Well, unfortunately, what we're seeing is that's happening to people in social media.
Yeah.
Their mind is starting to stray from the facts. It's very easy, especially for some people on YouTube, influential people that have a good following, to hear that person over and over again say, see, there's 3 unidentified profiles. They had an accomplice, when it's the furthest from the truth. Law enforcement has said they believe it's one individual alone. It's Bryan Kohberger. Now, they could be wrong, and I understand examining the facts that we have, but to extrapolate because you have 3 profiles when there's all these other explanations that really make the most sense, to just throw those out the door, that's the problem. So you're right, it's working, this shotgun approach.
And then they're going after the training records and this and that. It's like,
well, the training records, I think, are going to be a big goose egg, but I think people need to look at it in a broader sense, right? They're trying to say that the Moscow Police Department is inept. They're not properly trained. Maybe some of them haven't gotten any training.
yeah.
But what they're failing, what I think they're going to fail to show, is that anything was singular in nature. In other words, not just me, Jennifer Coffindaffer, went to go interview Dylan Mortensen. It was me, and it was Tyler, and it was 3 other people. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it was probably recorded. But but I think they're getting, and that's why I think they've already got the training records of everybody else that the prosecution is planning on using, but now they're going to people that the prosecution isn't going to use, because I think they want a sweeping view of this lack of training for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to fall flat. And I think the reason the prosecution drug their feet, which I've always said, just give it to them. Why are you dragging your feet? But as I've thought about this, I think that they were worried about setting a precedent, because you're not using these people. What next are they going to do? Want all the secretary records?
Yeah.
Want anybody who was just like drove somebody there and dropped them off that was an officer. And so I think they were afraid of opening a way broader door. But the judge ordered it, and they'll turn it over, and it's going to be a goose egg.
Well, the prosecution does appear to be 11th hour kind of folks. I mean, when we look at when they went for the indictment, it's at the last minute. I mean, we were prepping for that trial 2 days later. And so that kind of feels like it's going to be their strategy, which does make it more difficult for the defense. Is there any final thoughts or final words you want to share with us?
Tyler, what was that last question you had, though? We discussed the other profiles. Oh, yeah. Let me just address this last question. The concern about there not being any DNA in the car, the other places, right? And initially, myself, and I think 100% of anybody I ever gave their expert opinion on this that's been in law enforcement, all of us, I think, believed, and I certainly did, not about the apartment, not about the house, but for me, I specifically said about the car.
Yeah.
That it could have a treasure trove of, I didn't say DNA, I don't think, but blood evidence. I think I said blood evidence, something to that degree. And I'm still not convinced. I mean, we don't know what all they have, Tyler. We just don't. What we know is what the defense wrote in a motion.
Yeah.
That is not evidence.
Right.
It's not that I don't believe Ann Taylor and her team, but I noticed she also very strategically used words that I think were wrong about the sheath. Twice she said it was placed or placed. That would seem as if she's trying to say it was planted. And I think that was very wrong of her. Say it was found, but to say it was placed, she's trying to insinuate something that isn't in evidence, that's not at all factual. And you have everybody running around now saying, see, it was planted. I thought it was wrong of her to do that, but very intentional.
She's vicious, it feels like to me. I mean, she's doing her job.
She's doing her job, and she should vehemently defend him, because the last thing we want for justice for those kids is if he doesn't get if he doesn't have good representation, if he doesn't have them fighting for his life, we could have appeal issues anyway. So, quite frankly, and what people I don't think realize about my position is keep fighting, Ann Taylor.
Yep.
Keep, employing lawyer after lawyer after lawyer, expert after expert. I mean, they had 2 experts just to discuss the media.
Yeah.
That is unheard of. I'm telling you, Tyler, it's thousands of dollars for these experts. An expert report, like I just read there, I'm going to guess 30,000+ just for the report.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
I
more.
think that's wild. And this could go down as the most expensive case in Idaho history for all we know.
Oh, I don't doubt that. But I just wanted to really thank you. I always love your audience. Tyler, I think you were maybe the second person, or, I trust you because your heart is so in the right place. You look at everything from an evidentiary standpoint. You call out things of concern, but you don't go down those rabbit holes for sensational reasons.
Yep.
They're headline making, but at the end of the day, they don't indicate truth. And so I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate you. Your Twitter is a main source for our content that we create here. So thank you so much for it. I want to pray for you if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't know if what I was saying about what I feel like is happening with just the battle on truth, if that resonates with you, or if you've thought about it in those terms, but you really are important.
Tyler, can I say something on that? I meant to say this. So I started it and got on a rabbit hole. About 3 weeks ago, I was really getting frustrated. I think I was frustrated because not only about the trolls, and, I immediately, obviously, when somebody bashes me, the first thing I look at is, well, do they have a legitimate account? And about 90% got on with, one just bashed me today, and I looked and they just signed up, July 2023. So I look at that. Obviously, to me, and I can tell by writing styles, I keep track, like, how do they write? And I think there are other people that have accounts that are trolling in some cases. Anyway, but I was kind of getting down. I was getting frustrated thinking, what are people not, it was just frustrating. And then, of course, I'm human, it's hurtful to my feelings. Like, I think mostly to have anybody call into question my career. You can call into question me. Like, some people just don't like my personality or, how I say things. That's fine, but not my career. Yeah. And I was kind of getting my feelings hurt a little. And then I realized, oh my God, no one has any experience.
Yeah.
No one's investigated a case. Yeah. No one has been a grand jury. Nobody's written a probable cause affidavit. Nobody's put their life in the way of another so that they weren't hurt. No one has done cases. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm good.
Yeah.
Not that I'm all that, because I love everybody's opinions, and people see so much that is important. But it just brought me back down to, I need to look at the people that are naysaying and
Yep.
realize their reason and their purpose.
I always feel like one of the ways I process it, which that way is really great. Just me personally, I don't have that experience that you have, but I'm like, I have an entire life, and this little snippet that I do on YouTube is just one little aspect of who I am as a person. And I feel like a lot of these people, this is like their entire world, and so I kind of take it in consideration like that. I'm like, okay, my identity is actually in God and in my relationship through Jesus, not in this. And so I can take the hits, and you got to have tough skin to do it for sure, but I can take the
Mhm.
hits because it's not where I find my source as a human. So,
Yes, that's so well said too, Tyler.
well, let me pray for you because I really feel it in my spirit how important your voice is in this season, because I think about the cases of the past year that I've covered, where the Dylan Rounds case, the Kylie Rodney case, and then the Bryan Kohberger case. And in each of those cases, it went wild. There's Kylie Rodney wasn't real, and then all this crazy stuff about Dylan Rounds, and there's a battle of truth that we're at war against. And your voice, and I think God's raising you up to be a very important voice
Thank
on
you.
it. And I think that maybe is even the first time I ever prayed for you. One of the things I started praying for you over was like, I think you're going to be really important, and I continue to see your platform increase, and I like every time like you're on more TV shows, I'm like, yes, that's so exciting for me. I'm like cheering you on. I can't wait till you have your own show, the Coffindaffer Hour. Like, it's going to be so great.
You're so funny. I was approached recently, but it's in LA, and there's no way I'm going to go to LA. But there's some really good coming up. Brian Inton and I are working on a project, and it's actually, you're going to love this because it's social media
Mm,
and cyber sleuths and the Idaho case, how they're intertwined.
wow.
And there's two of those coming up, one taking kind of one look at it in one light and another one taking another look. They both kind of reach two different conclusions. I have a big one coming up on CNN. So I'm excited with the chance really just to talk about the facts.
Yeah.
Um, that's really all it is about, is talking about the facts and not letting this case, people, I guess, forget about the savage, brutal murders that took place. Because when I saw, as an example, of Leslie Van Houten, and I brought this up because it really bothered me when I was a kid and read Helter Skelter
Hmm.
and got so into that, was my first true crime case as a young
Hmm.
person, Tyler, and saw now that somebody who was involved with stabbing over 40 times, LaBianca, who was involved with writing with a knife on the belly of somebody, taking blood from the innards of somebody and writing on the walls. And now, because everybody's forgotten, because she was a model citizen in prison, because she's a good person now, forgetting what those families
Yeah.
and what those victims suffered. And it can happen overnight, Tyler,
Yeah.
that people just put it in the rearview mirror. And this case could be years before it goes to trial. And it's important to keep the truth out there.
Well, I feel like you were instrumental in the Ellen Greenberg case. That one has, is that, I say her name right? That one
Yeah.
has made its way into the ecosystem, and people are talking about it in a different light. So, the way I see it, which I process most things spiritually, I think you have a tremendous calling on your life as a warrior of truth. And that's why you are so bent on these facts, because it's actually a calling from God, and he's trusting you with it, and you're doing really well.
Thank you, Tyler.
Well, let me pray for you. So, Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, I thank you so much for Jennifer, and both of our hearts in this case, that the families would feel peace, and that there's justice for the victims, peace for the families. Your word says that there's supernatural peace, and you're close to the brokenhearted. So I pray right now, even for the victims' families, that they'll begin to just be overwhelmed with your peace. That even as we're praying right now for the Gonsalves family, the Mogan family, the Chapin family, the Kernodle family, they would feel your overwhelming peace. And I bless Jennifer in the mighty name of Jesus. I thank you, Lord, for the important voice that you've given her. I pray that there's an increase of influence that comes her way in that. I thank you, Lord, that you've made her strong. I pray you'd surround her even with even protection angels that are continuing to lift her arm up. And Lord, I pray that she'd only hear and see the things you want her to see and hear. She'd only respond to the things that you want her to respond to. And I pray that you give her supernatural wisdom on even how to articulate what it is she knows to be facts in cases and how she processes what's going on. So we bless her in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Thank you, Tyler. What a great blessing. And God bless everybody in your audience. And I just want to thank them for even tuning in. And thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Guys, wasn't that great having Jennifer Coffindaffer on the show? I absolutely love her. And you guys know she's one of my favorites, if not my favorite commentator as we talk about all of this stuff. If I missed your super chat, Teresa, I tried to sneak that in. I'd already told her I was done asking questions when we had a couple come in, but I did kind of sneak the training records one in there for you. And then Karen said, the tire skid marks, could he have changed tires? He could have. I don't know if he did. There would be a record of that for sure, Karen. And then Southern Sass with that super sticker. Tim Allen, thank you for your super sticker during the stream as well. Thank you guys so much for your support. Hopefully you guys appreciated the program. I'll be back just in a couple of hours for our evening program. I do want to encourage you, if you're able to support us today, we're totally crowdfunded. If you're able to support, you can support through PayPal, which is Tyler Feller Cash App, $ Tyler Feller 22, or Venmo at Tyler-Feller. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will be back very, very soon.